playoffs are here, and between upsets and buys and attaboys, we got a lot to break down. Jonesy's back in the studio, and that means it's time for Flashing the Leather. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 4, I think, of Flashing the Leather. This is the Iceman, Matt Freites, and that is John, Jonesy Jones, resident Phillies fan, so you are in euphoria. But it's been a little bit since we have recorded, my man. It is good to see that face, and welcome back to what my friend has dubbed Iceman Studios.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's very good to be back. The last time we were in the studio was right after the trade deadline.
Yes.
We tried to get in about once a month. September always throws me a curveball because it's so busy. Kids, school, couple birthdays, wedding anniversaries. Then you got to throw in like everybody's getting sick for the first time going back to school. You and I both caught that, and now it's like, okay, baseball playoffs, and let's get back in the studio. So I am very happy to be here.
I'm very happy you are here. And speaking of fevers, we're at a fever pitch now with the MLB Playoffs on. But you're right, the last time we were here was the trade deadline. And we're going to get to that episode because John and we have some victory laps to take, but we're going to get to that. But I want to kind of jump right into what is going on now, just so everybody's aware. The night we are recording is Game 1 of the ALCS with the Astros and the Rangers, and we're going to break that down a little bit later. But I kind of want to start as to where we are. The playoffs are obviously in. We're a couple rounds deep now. There are only, 4 teams left and 8 wins to be had from either of these any of these 4 teams to get to the end. It has been a long season, as it always is, and I would say, and I posited last time, that I think it was probably the most exciting season that's had in a while, and I think that overall,
I agree with that.
The new rules, the pitch clock, like watching these playoff games, I see the clock in the corner of the screen, but it's not really having any effect in any of these games. The players have adapted a long time ago. The game is quicker, the game is exciting, and I think that as a result, the sport absolutely benefited from it, and anybody who still hates on it, you're just a hater at this point.
Yeah, I like how you're kind of firing off with that first, because we talked about that in the first episode about how is this going to affect the season. People were really angry in the preseason, like to the point where they're not going to watch the sport anymore.
I always love that too, by the way. I love when people do that, just so you know. If you're one of those people who says, I'm never doing this again, the sport will not miss you. Go ahead.
And we were both on the same page where, no, this is better for the sport, and nobody's missed a beat. The players have completely acclimated to the new rules, and it's like an afterthought.
Yeah, it really is. But I know that a lot of people have opinions, so if you want to give your inherently crappy opinion on the pitch clock, 703-718-6314 is the number to call or text the show.
Well thought out opinions are also welcome.
They are welcome, but I will tell you that from experience, especially when you get into hardcore baseball talk, that many of the diehards do not like these rules. They do not like excitement. I would actually say that they're anti-fun.
Ouch.
I mean, think about it, man. I think that when it comes to the purity of any sport that we love, I think it makes a lot of sense that people are married to whatever happened in times past, right? Times long gone, because that's what we remember. Nostalgia is very heavy in baseball as well, the way that they traffic in their history, and they do a great job of doing that. Progressive thinking has never really been at the forefront in baseball until very recently, because baseball is looking at their fan base dwindling and aging. And so they're trying to compete with other sports that have captured the now really short attention span of your average viewer.
We've kind of covered this, but it's an always evolving sport. It always has, even though people don't like the change. The one thing I kind of recall mentioning was, maybe not including the pitch clock in the playoffs. I think
or lengthening it. I think we said.
But
doesn't matter.
It hasn't mattered for me. Now that we're in the postseason, well into the postseason, I don't think it's a factor. And the pitchers, they're watching the clock. They're timing it. The batters are getting into the box. We're watching it right now. Jose Abreu getting into the box. It's a non-issue.
It is a non-issue. But can I just say that in terms of progressive thinking, these broadcasts with the ump cams and things, I love that. I really like seeing the perspective or different perspectives out in the field. Yeah. And I think that that's something that baseball needs to continue to traffic in. But There have been a couple of rounds that have gotten us to this point, but the playoff field was interesting to me because I feel like the playoff field had teams in it. Like the Marlins made the playoffs this year, and that's a team that has been perennially bad.
What a story. Yeah. They were playing with house money in the playoffs, and although they got knocked out very quickly and swept, what a way to bust into the playoffs. I mean, as the last wild card team and playing the Phillies, divisional rival, they've always given the Phillies a hard time in the regular season, and I had a twinge of me being a Phillies fan, I got my hat on. I had a twinge of, what if? Crossed my mind.
You were relatively nervous. Like talking out in the neighborhood, you were like, they're already in my head.
They're already in my head. Yeah, they were. And they were a non-factor. The Phillies took care of their business, and it was a non-issue. So, and all is well. And then we just moved on to the Braves.
Yes, and we'll get to that. But so Phillies and Marlins play the wild card, and I at first was kind of against them getting rid of the one-game playoff because I thought, hey, if you don't want to be in it, do better. But baseball's a long season. It's not that easy to just say do better with injuries, and you're going to have slumps. You're going to have losing streaks because it's 162 games. Like it's hard. It's impossible to have a perfect season and just have everything go your way.
Yeah.
And so, but when they extended it, by extending the playoff field, that was better because I like the fact that there's more teams involved, which means that you have a more exciting pennant race in September, which is obviously better for the product. It's better for the viewer. And of course, now you get more playoff baseball, which is better for the viewing experience. And I like that the Phillies got to play the Marlins, who are a division rival. You never know what's going to happen. And it's not just, well, the Marlins get hot in one game, so the Phillies are gone. Now, both teams have to win 2 games, and your pitching rotation gets set back. But as you said, the Phillies just sort of demolished the Marlins. But I thought that one takeaway was how amazing the crowd was. And the crowd is always amazing in Philly. But after last year, I feel like the Citizens Bank Park took it to another level so far.
They have. And I mean, I know the Phillies don't gather a lot of sympathy from the viewing public.
No.
Not a whole lot of people love the Phillies. However, if you are to watch the game, watch what the energy at Citizens Bank Park. It's positive, it's fun, it's highly energetic. This is what the sport's about. This is honestly this team. I think it's connecting with the city more than the 08 team.
I was going to say that actually.
I think it really is. I mean, you're really connecting with the city. The fans are so into it. The energy's there. This is one of the most fun times I've seen as a Phillies fan. Last year they got in, they made that incredible run, and this year they're doing something very similar. And now they've got like a little bit of a resiliency factor. Like, hey, we've been here before. And we're ready, and we're still ready to get it done.
This is not a star-studded Phillies team in terms of like compared to the 08 team, which obviously had Ryan Howards and Chase Utleys and players like that. I think that this team embodies more of what I think the city of Philadelphia feels, like as a community. And I think after last year's run, relatively the same team, right outside of Trey Turner, with big acquisition in the offseason, but. And this team, I think, gets in, and I know that they had a rough season, at least when we were recording last, but they bring it on and in the end, and they're a very likable team, in my opinion.
Yeah, the players. You're covering a lot of territory I want to cover, but yeah, it's you mentioned getting hot in the playoffs and how any team can, and now you're mentioning that they went through a slump in the middle of the season. Well, the way the good thing about the playoffs, the way that they're made, is that you can go through a slump. That's not going to kill your season. You can go look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I want to talk about them separately, but they had a good year. They were in there. They had a terrible August where they were just slumping terribly. They fell out of contention almost entirely, and they're like, are they even going to make it? They bounced back in September, and they were able to get into the playoffs because of the format that they have. And look at them now. They beat the Dodgers.
Well, and baseball is a rare sport where because there are so many games, you can have a bad month. In the NFL, if you have a bad month and you go 1-3, that significantly decreases your chances of even being able to make a playoff run. But you mentioned, the Phillies getting rid of the Marlins, and I think you talked about having bad months. Well, the Tampa Bay Rays started their season historically by winning the first 13 or 14 games.
Oh, it's like 20 games.
Our first episode, which you can go back and watch us awkwardly step through this, was about how that front office did things differently and they have almost cracked the code to be able to do low payroll winning baseball. And they just completely unceremoniously get knocked out of the playoffs.
And they still made the playoffs. The Rays had a lot of bad injuries that riddled their season toward the end, and the unfortunate Wander Franco issue.
Oh yes, we won't dive into that.
No, it doesn't need to be dove into. But they also lost Shane McClanahan and another star, which I'm failing to remember. But Shane was their ace starting pitcher. You lose an ace, and you really need that star ace pitcher if you go into a wild card situation, because you need them to be able to pitch one game, get the win, and then in a best of 5 situation, you maybe even be able to send them out twice if things get, maybe in a game 1 or game 5 situation. But no, I mean, hats off to the Rays. We did give them lots of accolades in the beginning of the season. They made the playoffs, even with a team that didn't look like they should be very good, but they found a way.
Yep.
And they'll be back next year.
They will, but they also ran into a buzzsaw, which is the Rangers. Now, the Rangers, I would say, are probably the streakiest team in Major League Baseball, and they're on a heater right now. And so I think the Rays coming in with all the injuries, not playing their best baseball at the end, and that's something we're going to get to in the next round, because I think that the discussion about teams that come in hot, what that means in terms of buys and stuff, I think that matters.
Okay.
But so
you're going to table the Rangers right now?
For right now, yes,
okay.
Because the Rangers are currently on our television and in dire straits as the Astros have the bases loaded with 2 outs. But you also mentioned the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks, of course, again, they kind of just like buzzsaw through the Brewers. Now, I think I said something about the Brewers earlier in our season.
Boring?
Here. I think I said that maybe I said boring, but I think what I meant was like nondescript. And I think the way that they just get ousted in the playoffs by a team that you said had a terrible month of August, ended up surging at the end. And it's like the Brewers just kind of go away. I didn't see a lot of fanfare about it. And I thought that feels the way that I think about the Brewers, but that's not fair to them.
It's not fair. They had a good team. They put together a good season. I was rooting for the Cubs to make the playoffs. They actually made a couple trades in the postseason, tried to make something happen, didn't work out for them, and the Brewers ended up making it. And I mean, I like the Brewers. They're a good team. Yeah, I wasn't really feeling it though. I don't know. I can't explain it. And
that's me too. I can't explain why the Brewers are boring to me.
And I know that some baseball personalities I was listening to would say, "Oh yeah, the Brewers can make a run," and I'm thinking, I just don't see it. Sure, I mean, you can say they can beat the Phillies or whatever, but they got knocked out. They got swept, and they got swept at their house.
Yeah.
And it was like a non-issue.
It wasn't. Exactly. And it's almost perfect. And I feel bad. If you're a Brewers fan, I don't mean to disparage your team or disparage you. As a matter of fact, I think that those old school 80s Brewers uniforms with the baseball mitt and the pinstripes, that's a great look. Like, I wish they had that all the time. Like,
we still haven't done the uniform episode, which I've been wanting to do. Yeah, we'll have to do off season.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to talk baseball until the winter meetings at best.
That's a good idea.
We'll have to have something to fill it. But last one, Minnesota Twins get their first series victory since 2002. Think about this. The last time they won a playoff series, David Ortiz was a Minnesota Twin.
Oh, wow. And I think I saw that they didn't win a game since I'm not going to be able to pull the stat. It was like 2007, but and then they actually won the series. I was rooting for the Twins.
Yes.
Carlos Correa, I wanted to see him be the leader of the team. They had a couple scrappy guys. It was a fun season. Who was the Royce? Royce was the rookie that was like just mashing at a certain point. You didn't want to pitch to him. Good team. They'll be around. I'm excited to see what they do next year with some of their young talent. Byron Buxton didn't seem like he was fully in the mix, and he's always kind of like, is their injury bug going to affect him or not?
Oh, I know. He's like the Mike Trout. I hate to say that about Mike Trout, like I'm not disparaging him, but Byron Buxton has been hurt. Great name too, like just a fantastic name in general for sports. I don't know like what that is. Is that Byron Buxton? Is that a baseball player? Like, or is that quarterback? Like I always feel like there's certain names, like the Ole Miss quarterback, Jackson Dart. Like, what a great name for a quarterback. I love playing that game. You play the uniform game, the name game. Like Byron Buxton,
names out.
Second baseman or closer. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you got there?
It's a solid name. Buxton, we love you.
Yes, we do. But the wild card round was pretty much a wash, right? Like every team swept, I think, and that was it. And so the divisional series comes up. Now, the divisional series to me had some of the best storylines. And I think the best storyline coming in was certainly Phillies Braves, because the Braves, and this is historically accurate, offensively were akin to the 1927 Yankees. So I think we're like on almost everybody's Mount Rushmore of like best offensive teams of all time.
Nice pull.
Yes. And that's something I've been hearing a lot lately, because the series obviously did not go their way. Now, this is the second year in a row that the Phillies have eliminated them. But I personally believe that the Braves get a pass because they recently won a World Series. So you have to give them some credit for that.
Yeah,
but
2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And I realize in today's world, 2 years ago is like forever ago, but they have won a World Series recently. This isn't like it's been 30 years. But when you have a 104 win season, and you have the offensive output that they had with the players that they had in that team, historic seasons, right? And
the offense alone.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And their pitching staff was obviously very, very good. Like, you don't win 104 games having mediocre talent just about anywhere.
Were they the highest OPS team this year? I think they were.
It probably, yes.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me if that were the case.
Yeah.
And the series coming in to me felt personal, I think, for the Braves. And the Phillies come in and take game one, and it was like...
Hold on. Before...
go ahead.
Can I just jump in?
Absolutely.
Now, that matchup, like going in, the Phillies come in, a lot of people are kind of asking about, well, the break, what are we going to do with the break? And I don't know what the Braves did. I talked to a couple of Orioles friends of mine, and they said, well, it would be nice if like they could get like some sim games. I'm sure they did something, but again, Phillies draw a divisional rival and the team that the Phillies beat last year.
Yes,
and in kind of a similar circumstance, with Braves having home field advantage coming in, and even though the Braves are this historical team, like you say, you almost feel like the Phillies are the Braves' kryptonite.
Yes.
Is like the only team that could beat the Braves. That's how I felt as a Phillies fan. I'm like, this is the one matchup that this is the team that we could beat. And if the Braves win, they go on to win the whole thing. I felt like that could very likely happen.
It was very likely.
So that was going into game one. And then game one happens, and you've got Spencer Strider, who is a Cy Young candidate. I think he might end up getting number 2 this year, but behind Blake Snell.
Mm-hmm. Snell was great this year.
And I hadn't and every pitch matters in the postseason. So when you're watching Spencer kind of just carve up the strike zone, throwing 99 every pitch into the 7th inning, you're like, every pitch, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's movement on the fastball.
That is one thing I want to say, because he pitched in game 4 also. And and this is really a sign of what I've been talking about with baseball forever, is that I think that the pitching has gotten so good, and it has dictated the way that the batters are, the way that they approach hitting now, and like the way that launch angle and bat speed and things are so much different now. Whereas when I used to talk about how there's less balls in play, and I think a lot of that had to do with, number one, chicks dig the long ball, and number 2, these pitchers are just so good that the hitters have to do whatever they can. And Strider comes in, and I'm watching him in the 6th inning of game 4 and thinking, first of all, this guy deserves better because he's pitching excellent, right?
Yep.
And his ERA was a little bit more inflated when you see the stuff that he has. I think it was a shade under 4, but excellent record. The team record when he pitched was excellent. And he's throwing 99 and 100 with control and command in the 6th inning.
Yep.
And in my mind, I was like,
Scary.
I've been pushed back 20 years to where you had your ace starter, the guy who would go in there, not a workhorse, because the workhorse is the guy who gives up 4 runs over 6 2/3 because the bullpen is tired. Spencer Strider is throwing 99 effortlessly late into ball games. And the Phillies you could tell that it was their series, because if that's what you're getting from your ace and you can't win, you had no chance.
Yeah, he did make it look effortless. But you could see on the slow motion, he's putting his whole body into those pitches. Now, you did get Casty was able to knock him out, and the home runs were there. They just weren't there for the Braves as much, except for in game 2, where we saw Riley get into the mix. But the Phillies, Trey Turner was a big part of that. He got home runs, but he also got a double on a lot of RBI situations. Castellanos, JT Realmuto. Bryce Harper all got in the mix, and then a little bit of peppered in of some of their support players, the non-stars, but emerging stars at the bottom of the order also got involved. The other thing too about the Phillies this year was Bryce Harper playing first base really allowed Schwarber to remain on the bench as a DH. They switched Brandon Marsh to left field and opened up center field for Johan Rojas, making that great play in Game 4 with base loaded with Acuna. All of that was made happen just by some of those moves. So hats off to Bryce making the move to first base there.
And hats off to Schwarbs for having one of the weirdest seasons I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But hey, the guy hit 40 home runs and hit 188. God bless him, because you can't take that out of the lineup because of how many home runs he hits. But I think the storyline that came out of that game, that series, was obviously, I can't remember the player's name now. It's off the top of my head, but the attaboy Harper, that was said as an offhanded comment, I believe in Spanish.
Orlando Arcia.
Yeah, I believe in Spanish. And it was an offhanded comment that was made after Game 2 in the locker room. And I think he felt that it was a sacred space because it's the locker room. But there is a designated time where the media is allowed to be in the locker room for, I think it's like half hour or an hour. And everything that gets said there is on the record. And in my opinion, if you say something and you think, well, he wasn't supposed to hear that, well, then don't say it, because this is the playoffs and you don't need to be giving the other team bulletin board material. If you do say it, it is what it is. It's out there. You own up to it and you go out and play better. I did not feel bad for the guy. I thought that what Bryce Harper did was fine, but it's just amazing to me that in the year of our Lord, 2023, what gets people fired up to where Bryce Harper staring at him is somebody saying, attaboy. I love it.
Yeah. And the weird, I don't know the details of when he said it in the locker. I don't think the details have really emerged when he said, I don't know what the actual quote was, but he was kind of like cackling and because Harper had a hard time getting back to first base and got doubled up to end the game. And the other thing too was he's a natural native Spanish speaker. So I'm wondering if sometimes you can get away with speaking Spanish where if you're speaking English or the reporters speak English, kind of get away with saying more. I don't know. So a lot of those details we don't know. I did see Travis d'Arnaud, the catcher for the Braves, get pretty aggravated about talking about that sacred space in the locker room. As a fan of the sport, I loved it. I thought it was great. It's fair game. It adds drama. Honestly, Bryce Harper loves drama. I don't think he needed to be fired up. I think that Bryce Harper's already fired up, but it just kind of adds to his, this is what I'm going to do when I round the bases kind of situation. Just to kind of he's an entertainer, I think, at heart. He wants the sport to be entertaining. He wants to have those big moments. He wants the base loaded. He wants to hit the home run. And then he wants to stare down at, right at the shortstop. So it was all orchestrated very well.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, from an entertainment perspective, like I said, it was pretty benign in terms of any type of saying bad things about somebody else or trash talk. I didn't even consider that trash talk.
Yeah.
It was used for bulletin board material that happens all the time. Also, what happened in the Phillies-Braves series was in Game 4 specifically, and I think it happened in other points, but in Game 4 it was even more apparent, was the usage of relievers in big-time situations. Because I think, 20 years ago, every team had a closer, you had a setup guy, and you had your middle relievers, guys that you could count on to get big outs in certain situations before the 8th or 9th inning. And the Phillies did not do it that way. They knew that they had to get the biggest outs in the 6th inning. And so their closer goes in earlier in the game because, and tell me if you agree with this, because pitching has gotten so much better, relief pitchers almost all throw gas and have movement. And so you can be a little bit more reliant on a guy that is not your quote-unquote closer than you used to, because sometimes the biggest outs don't come in the ninth because you have men on base, less than 2 outs, and you have the 3, 4, 5 guys coming up. These are your biggest outs, not in the 9th inning when it's 7, 8, and 9 and the bases are empty. How do you feel about that? Because in the moment, felt like, well, this is odd, but then thought, actually, that's probably really good strategy.
I loved it because this is what Rob Thompson kind of brings to the team. Last year, you saw he was making changes in the bullpen, which just didn't make always great sense, but you kind of buy into it. The other thing too was in Game 3, Aaron Nola pitched a heck of a
Oh, he
game
did.
for them. The relief staff was rested. They shellacked the Braves like 10-2 or something like that. Didn't have to use a lot of their star relievers. And the Phillies, that was one of the things that they beefed up in the offseason and at the trade deadline was their relief staff is better than it was last year. They acquired Craig Kimbrell. They got Giovanni Soto. And then Alvarado, I mean, he's been lights out. He's the same as last year. That he just got him over, carried him over from the year prior. And then Sir Anthony Dominguez hasn't been as sharp, but serviceable. And then a handful of other guys. They've got a deep bullpen, and all of them can throw gas, like you said. So, yeah, they were rested going into Game 4. And then they're in a situation where, our starter looks like he's looking like he's in trouble. We're going to pull him. And, yep, we know we have to get some guys out. Alvarado got 2 quick outs. Then he walked 2. And now all of a sudden, Craig Kimbrell comes in because they've got to get d'Arnaud, because guess who's coming up next? Acuna. so all that, like, it really set the stage. And then you've got a wild pitch in which Pilar doesn't score on the wild pitch, and they definitely could have, but do you want to risk getting an out with Acuna on deck? Maybe not. So we've got the wheels are on motion for that perfect matchup between Craig Kimbrell and Acuna. 2 outs, bases loaded. it was like, and you're just hanging on the edge of every pitch. And Craig Kimbrell looked a little bit rattled with the wild pitching. Couldn't really tell where his head was.
Let me tell you, as a Red Sox fan in the 18 team, Kimbrell was their closer. It was what I assume is like being on cocaine, in that you just have no idea what's going to happen, when things are going to happen. He could be extremely accurate. He could walk the first 3 guys and then strike out the next 3 guys. And it's like this roller coaster ride of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, if he's your guy, bases loaded, and their best hitter is on, like, who else are you going to employ to get that out? Because if you're putting the middle reliever out there who's just another dude, it's not the same. Like, you need guys who can get outs in the playoffs. It's all about getting 27 outs every game. And that, I thought, was interesting, but it's also the sign of the times now.
Exactly. Well, and that's something that some of the teams, like I would say the Orioles, although I don't think the Orioles could do much against that buzzsaw of the Rangers, but every out matters. Every run matters. You can't afford a best of 3. You can't afford to lose a game. You can't afford to lose an inning. That's how close it is. So you even hint at a sense of trouble. You're as a manager, you need to be thinking, okay, who do I have coming up in the lineup? Who do I have in my bullpen? Who's getting warmed up? And that deep strategy part of the game that you're following as a fan is such a big part. And speaking of the Orioles, I think that they'll be back next year, and I hope that they get a better draw. But that was really cool to see as a Phillies fan in Game 4. And then they just worked through the bullpen. I mean, Kimbrell got another few outs, and then they put in the next guy. I forget who it was. I think it was Sir Anthony. And then it ended up being Matt Strahm finishing the game. And he's never been a closer.
No, but he also looks like Nicolas Cage from Con Air. So go back and take a look at that. That's fantastic.
I did see that.
So you mentioned the Orioles. Let's move on to them. Right now, the Rangers are up 2-0 in the bottom of the 5th inning on the Astros in Game 1. But the Orioles had
a Rangers
spectacular season. Oh, yeah, you and the entire country is rooting for the Rangers, although I really don't care. But
they have not won a World Series.
But the Orioles, I would say, they did run into a streaky team at the absolute wrong time, but that's still a very young team. And you could almost make the argument that the Orioles were a year ahead of the production that they had this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that coming into the series, you've got Bruce Bochy, who is a seasoned manager, won World Series, been there. And I do think that matters in baseball. I know that many people will say that with analytics and a computer could manage a baseball team. But I think that there's something still to be said about having somebody who's been there, having that guy like the Astros. This right here with the Astros, Dusty Baker, right? He's been there before. You can trust him to do the right thing in these situations. No matter what the analytics say, he's going to be able to pull from experience that he has. And I just think that the Orioles were a great story. They're going to be good if they do the economics right. for a long time.
They need to get a couple players, and I'm not sure if they will. That's my question for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a lot of young talent that did really well this year. And you'd like to see them win more than one game in the playoffs. But again, they get another team, and they maybe lose the series in 5, right? So I wasn't all that disappointed. I know a lot of people around here were disappointed in the Orioles, but it's like, you got to remember, the Angelos family has been running that team into the ground. And so to see them be this successful, I think is a positive step in the right direction.
Despite them.
Yes, but also a good young team that you can get behind. Baseball needs those stories because we can't be seeing the same thing all over again. If we're not going to have the teams that are going to move the needle like the Red Sox and Yankees and so forth, the Orioles and a young team is a great story that new fans can get behind. And so I think it was a win in that regard, but they just had no chance. I mean, the Rangers just took them out unceremoniously. It was like, you feel bad.
And there was no New York Yankees or no Mets. There's no L.A. Was on a bye, so you didn't get to go to L.A. You got to see a lot of cities and teams that don't normally get to be there. And the Rangers, if you want to get into this now, the Rangers lost the lead in their respective division. So I think they had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They had to make the longest flight from Texas to or wherever they were traveling to Tampa, which Tampa, I mean, yes, they're a good team, but to Baltimore. My fault. So they had to move to Baltimore, but they had a chip on their shoulder, and they just came out swinging so hard. Adolis Garcia, the players that seemingly went to sleep at the end of the season just woke up. They were angry.
Happens a lot in the playoffs, and that's what makes baseball baseball. Is a team that you think is dead is just, it rises. Last one of these big-time winners in the regular season was the Dodgers. Nobody feels bad for the Dodgers right now. I just want to put that out there. I mean, if you have the Astros as the most hated team in the major leagues, I think the Dodgers are the least sympathetic because they spend all the money. And I think it's just people are tired of the big spending teams that always get all the big-name free agents. So they run into the Diamondbacks, who were a team that you said was left for dead in August, comes back to life, WWE Undertaker style, just rises up from the canvas. And the Dodgers, honestly, heading into this
music in my head now.
Yes. And if we had the rights to the gong, we would play it here, but I don't. And the thing is, the Dodgers put out Clayton Kershaw. Now, I want to say this, and it's not disparaging against Kershaw, but at this point in his career, he's not Clayton Kershaw. Had a great season, right?
Yes.
Less than 3 ERA, fine. But in the playoffs, this is a different beast entirely. And good Lord, if this is the last we see of Clayton Kershaw,
less than an inning.
Third of an inning, 6 earned. And you never want to see that out of a guy who he's going to go into the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's really that much discussion, is there, for Kershaw?
Yeah, he's got the ring. He's got the
so dominant.
Yeah.
Though.
I mean, he's got a lot. He's got the stats. I have to look the actual stat line again, but yeah, he
may not be first ballot Hall of Famer, but he's going to get in.
He's going to get in, yeah.
But the Dodgers now face, this is the third out of the last 4 seasons. Well, actually, if you think about, they made the World Series in 2018 against the Red Sox, and so outside of 2020, they've had a lot of disappointing exits, especially recently from the playoffs. And you can't make the excuse that they aren't spending money because they're getting the guys to win. They have the talent.
Yeah.
And I think that now we maybe need to look at culturally what is not working for the Dodgers. Is it Dave Roberts, who I love for Red Sox reasons? Right? Dave Roberts. But I know that a lot of Dodgers fans, and if you're one of them, please chime in. They won a title in 2020, but I think when you look back on it, it's a shortened season. And does it really count as much as winning through a full season, through a full playoff run, a real playoff run? I think it's fair to look at the Dodgers' recent history and question them in terms of organizational achievements. We did that with the Braves in the 90s. How many division titles in a row?
13.
1 World Series to show for it. That matters. Bringing it home matters when you have all the talent. So I want your thoughts on the Dodgers and try to do it in the least emotional way possible, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of hit it there. Not a well-liked team. I couldn't even tell you rationally why that is, because the Phillies spend money, the Red Sox spend money. Why do we hate the Dodgers so much?
Success.
I cannot put my finger on it.
Oh, they hate the Red Sox too. I think any big market team is
maybe
that
it's
way.
just the big market team. You just want to beat them.
You know what it is, though? It's that these teams, and the Dodgers represent that now more than ever, they get everybody.
Yeah, they get everybody. They're in the Shohei Ohtani discussion before he had the Tommy John surgery.
They'll still be in it, though. And I think that's what gets it, is that they'll always be in it.
Yeah, they've got the money. They signed Mookie, who is a future Hall of Famer in his prime.
Yes.
They signed Freeman in some weird Atlanta deal. They did get rid of Bellinger, which was a good move for them. And then they've got Kershaw, and they signed whoever else. Trevor Bauer, that didn't go so well for them.
No, they did not. I'm not going to get into that either. But they did lose Justin Turner to the Red Sox, obviously, this past year, right?
Yeah.
And Kershaw, I think, is going to be, if this isn't his last year, it will be very, very soon coming up. But Freeman and Betts, 1 for 21 in the series. It happens.
If you would have told me that those guys would go for 1 for 21, I wouldn't predict that they'd be swept, but I'd say that they would lose the series, but not swept.
No. But you have to admit,
cannot win with that.
But we have to now think about the future of the Dodgers, right? Like, in terms of the culture. Like, does Dave Roberts stay? I mean, we're doing this with the Yankees now. Every year.
Personal opinion, I don't think you fire a manager that just got them nearly 100 wins. You can't.
But how many playoff exits is it going to take is my question. I'm not advocating for it. I'm merely asking the question for content
I don't think
purposes.
You do it because here's what's going to happen. It's going to be in like an Andy Reid situation where you fire a coach because he's not getting it done, right? And say you're making the playoffs all the time, and then all of a sudden you fire Andy Reid. That doesn't solve anything. Then you're just a mediocre team with no coach, and then you're hurting for. It doesn't matter how much money you spend.
Yeah, maybe, but I think the other problem,
maybe the manager is the head that needs to roll. Though.
But always, because the manager is you can't cut all the players, right?
No,
these guys have guaranteed contracts, so no matter what you do, you're going to get paid. But I think that the big issue may not be necessarily Dave Roberts. But it could be that they get all the guys, but are they the right guys? Because if you look at the teams in the championship series right now, they're all teams that have extremely great chemistry that came on at the end of the season. You can take a bunch of superstars and put them in a conglomerate together, but are they the right fit?
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman worked for the Braves because he fit into what that team needed at that time. Freddie Freeman's a great player.
Very good player, yeah.
Right, an excellent player. Mookie Betts is a great player. But do they work together in the way that team has been constructed? Yes, in the regular season they do, but when you get to the playoffs, this is when the chips are down.
I mean, maybe it's a situation where they're putting all their chips in a couple stars, and then when they don't get it done, it's evident that they're not a very good team. So you have a team like the Phillies where you've got some of the other members of their team chipping in and making it happen. Whereas in LA, you put, Kershaw falls apart. Well, that's game over. You give up 6 runs in the first inning. That's kind of hard to get back from. But when you've got poor quality at bats coming from your top 2 stars, that's not going to get it done. And I don't know. It seems like to me, some teams like they're in their own head. So now that they've been kicked out of the playoffs, they have these great seasons. Maybe that starts to like wiggle in as some like a little bit of a curse situation where they're like, oh, we can't win in the playoffs, and then it's a thing. But I mean, if I was a Dodgers fan, I don't think I could support firing the manager, Dave Roberts. Let's see, maybe Kershaw needs to take another role with the team. Maybe he's not the same, and figure out your starting pitcher situation again. I don't know what the fix is.
I know exactly what the
spend
fix
more
is.
money. Spend more money and get more players.
I know exactly what the fix is. Sign Shohei Ohtani and piss everybody off. That's what's going to happen. You need Kershaw when you have him, although he may not pitch again. But that's what we won't even talk about that either.
Bottom line is they're a phony team and they're out, and we're all happy for it.
That's getting cut. So, last thing, Astros and Twins. Twins were a great story. Astros, though, even though they only won 90 games this season, they add Verlander at the trade deadline, which was a steal now because he's continuing to pitch at a very elite level. And the Astros
Mhm,
just are
mhm.
good. This is now their 7th straight LCS trip, which is
Yeah.
amazing to me. I know a lot of people are saying, well, they had to cheat to do it. And like they cheated from 17 to 19. They haven't cheated since then. So
No.
they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And that sets us up for the Twins, I think, as we said, will be back. But they just ran into a team that is deeper and has better starting pitching and just, again,
Mhm.
gets the right hits when they need them in the right spots. That's what makes baseball special. So now we find ourselves to this Final Four, and you got Astros and Rangers on here. We'll start with that one first. Battle for Texas. This is kind of fun, although from Major League Baseball's perspective, not really, because they'd like to have more than one state in.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. From a ratings perspective, 100%. Like, Texas is going to be off the charts.
Oh,
but
man. That's so funny because for me, I actually liked the matchup.
Oh, I love the matchup. Like, baseball people like the matchup. I'm talking about the people that put their glasses on and are looking at the ratings numbers, the money making coming from this. They don't want two Texas markets in the same series. They would like there to be.
It's the first time they've met up in the
it is cool,
in the LCS, yeah.
But the thing that's really cool about this to me is, of course, you got two teams that are coming in. One team is a veteran team, or at least has veteran leadership, especially with Dusty Baker, Justin Verlander on the team. I thought that his speech after they won the division series was awesome. When he's like, we went through a lot of adversity. I wasn't effing here earlier. And I thought that's great. Like, he gets it. And then you've got the Rangers, who you were really high on all season long.
Very
you
fun
loved
team.
them. Yeah.
I was. I love them. They're a super fun team. The manager, Bruce Bochy, I think, is going to get AL Manager of the Year.
Probably.
Whereas I think the NL Manager of the Year will be Tori Tolovo, the Diamondbacks manager. Yeah, such a fun year. Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia. They acquire Jordan Montgomery. Last year's acquisitions actually come together. Nathan Eovaldi has a lights out season, gets a little bit injured, banged up, has come back. Now he's pitching again. Jordan Montgomery pitches game 1. He's doing fantastic.
Yeah, we're in the bottom of the 6th now. He has 83 pitches, so he could be out there for the 7th inning, depending on how Bruce Bochy wants to handle it. But pitching fantastic. And I think that this is awesome, too, because you have two guys, and this is a tease for our victory laps, but you got Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, two guys who signed big deals with the New York Mets. And then they find themselves in the
facing
League Championship
off against
Series.
each other, yeah.
But Scherzer, we thought he was going to be out for the whole year, and now he's on the playoff roster. So this kind of sets up some fun intrigue. You got two guys. Now, I will say, though, I think Verlander, it still amazes me. He's, 42? And he's still pitching at this elite level. He's pitching really great tonight. He's having a fantastic game.
Yep.
Scherzer, though, didn't look very good most of the season. But who knows, right? He comes back. If they can get something out of him, kind of like the way the Red Sox got just enough out of David Price in 18, right? That's all you need. But it's intriguing to me, and I think that this is fun because it's almost like, first of all, it's the country rooting for the Texas Rangers, and nobody's rooting for the Astros unless you actually live in Houston.
No one.
Just, that's the way it is. I mean, I don't care because I can rationally think about these things.
That's
but
the biggest cheating scandal in the past, however many years.
I was going to say the Black Sox would like a word.
Yeah.
But you're right. It has been a while. But I think that this is intriguing because it's a young team versus the team that everybody hates. But yet you got a lot of talent on both sides. And this is going to go 7 to me. This is that kind of a series where I feel like it's going to, the crowds are going to be super into it. I cannot wait for them to get back to Arlington to see what that crowd is like meaningful baseball. This is the first meaningful baseball the Rangers have played since 2011 when they lost the World Series in heartbreaking fashion.
Good call,
So you always want to see that, and I'm excited for it, man, because I think that both of these teams have something that you should be able to find fun and exciting to watch. But if you can't, again, you're just anti-fun.
Yeah, and I did see Max Scherzer make the roster. I thought that, and I didn't know he's on the cuff. I didn't even know if that was where he was possible not making it.
I didn't either.
Apparently, that was news today.
Yes.
I like to see him on the roster.
I do. And then, of course, your beloved Phillies, which we'll spend more time on, have the Diamondbacks. Now, this is intriguing because this is two teams who are coming in and have a lot of momentum. Very similar to the American League Championship Series.
Yep.
And fun fact, this is the first time in LCS history, I think, that all 4 teams left have 90 wins or less.
Oh.
So these are all
This is what we wanted.
Yes. But I want to ask you,
Maybe.
we didn't get to this earlier. So all of these teams did not get a bye for the most part. I think the Astros did, but other than that,
wild card team.
Yep, wild cards. Yeah,
all of them.
All of right. Yes, and so this idea of the bye, a lot of people are trying to focus on it as the reason why these teams with 99 plus wins are losing. And I said to you offline, and I will say it here too, that I do not buy into that fact because I think that you're professionals. Like these are professional teams. Teams in the NFL get a bye and it doesn't affect them because the NFL is also about rhythm. Baseball is very much about that. And there are things that you can do to continue to stay in rhythm. And you could make the argument as well that you get a lot of dings and dents over the course of 162 games. So having a little bit of extra time for a guy who maybe is just feeling a little bit weird in his hip, and you think about those things when you're doing your thing. I would think that any team, if given the option, would still take the bye regardless. It's all about how you prepare during it. I think it's a cop-out to say that it's the format that's killing them.
I agree 100%. I think that it is a cop-out, and I've read some Atlanta Braves articles that say, ask the Phillies if they want to buy. Ask them if they want to buy, and I would say, of course I do.
They 100% would. You cannot convince me differently.
You're going to rest all of your pitchers and get a chance to see the other team play, and then you can have some sim games. Bring up your AAA team. Go play a couple games with them. Take a day off, take 2 days off, and then play a couple sim games, and then stay engaged. Stay in the batting cages up until midnight if you need to. Be ready. Get up, and then by the time by the way, the team's coming to your house. You don't even have to leave on an airplane. You just you just go to the stadium.
This stuff triggers me because these are professionals. Okay, like
exactly.
I'm going to continue to say that. This isn't you or I out there who, yes, we would need a day off if we went to the batting cages for an hour because that's just where we are in life. But these are professionals, and especially with hitters. I understand that hitting is very much about rhythm and timing.
Yeah.
But again, like you have off days during the season, or you have times where a guy is hurt, he's on the 10-day IL, and he comes back after not playing for a week and a half. Sometimes those guys come back and are fine. This is I don't want to say it's soft, but it's like this just comes down to bad preparation, and the team that is coming into your preparation has to be, this team is coming off a high of winning the last series. We need to match that intensity.
I think what it is those teams haven't really had to play for anything meaningful in the end of the season.
1,000% agree with you. I think that does matter. In a sport like baseball, the Atlanta Braves haven't played meaningful baseball. July?
2 weeks. Oh, well, July, sure.
Think about it.
At least 2 weeks.
They were going to make the playoffs.
Right. Well,
is my point.
Okay.
Right.
You could play average baseball and cruise in. Yeah.
They won 104 games, which is insane. So think about how they didn't have to really worry about that.
No, that's it. Yeah, we've seen that happen many times in the past where and I was thinking, like even within 2 weeks of time or even the month of September, where you're just kind of cruising in. Your mentality is not there that you have to play a must-win game. These other teams scrapping.
Yes, that scrapping I think does matter, and that's what I'm saying is if you're the Atlanta Braves, you need to start thinking at some point, like they won the division by 14 games?
Yeah.
That means they hadn't played a real meaningful game until they got to game 1 of the division series. And if that's the case, it's on the manager to get those players in that mentality of this. And I think that it's fair to say that the Braves weren't prepared. The Dodgers weren't prepared. The Orioles, I think, get a little bit of a pass because they're a young team who I don't think they expected to be front runners in that regard at the end of the season. Like they were playing really, and so
I wanted them to win only because the last time they won was 40 years ago in '83. So that was kind of nice.
Man, I was born that year. You and I were born that year.
That's what we've been,
Brooks Robinson was still alive.
Just
back
one
then.
of those number things where it would have been cool if it worked out.
I agree, but I just think that there's
you're right.
Too much talk about this, and it's a cop out. It's a thing for media people to talk about it. It's a thing for these fan bases to get into, and I just don't buy into it. I think this is the format. Get over it. Get used to it. Play better.
I agree. Get over it. You play the game. It's just whining at this point.
So how do you feel about this series? Because the Phillies are coming in with hot hitting, hot pitching, hot crowd. Diamondbacks the same way, but I would venture a guess that for the most part, maybe people are rooting against the Phillies, but I feel like the Phillies have more of the momentum just because they're still riding high from that playoff run last year. The crowd is super behind them. The team is super gelled together. And what I've noticed is that the guys like Castellanos finally starting to hit. And these are the guys that need to produce in the right times in the playoffs, and they're getting that. And I think it makes them dangerous.
Yeah, and Castellanos is so poised as well. I think I saw him at the end of game 4 or 5, and he was saying, yeah, we've got 8 more games to win. I'm not celebrating. And they had the champagne. They did their thing. But yeah, all of them are like, yeah, on to the next game. We're ready. And he's been a real leader of the team in this year and in the postseason. Him and Harper are very tight. They do have the star power. The stars are aligning in Philly, I think, this year, and we're going to see another good. Now, Arizona does scare me. This team is also coming in hot. They just swept LA. They've got the pitching that you're going to see. Zach Gallen, Corbin Carroll scares the heck out of me. Rookie of the year. They've got Gurriel's hitting. Ketel Marte seems like when he's on is one of the best players in the game. So it's going to be a heavyweight match. The good thing is the first game is in Philadelphia, and that's tomorrow, and they'll be able to get that energy back up. So you have to take at least one. The thing about I guess the 7-game series, how's it go? Does it go 2, 3, and 2?
I think so.
So
yes, I believe so.
It's going to. So that could be problematic if you lose one game in Philly. Then you've got to go back and play 3 in Arizona. When you've just lost home field advantage unless you're able to secure another win or 2 in Arizona.
My hot take on this is I'm not sure how much home field advantage truly matters in baseball to the extent that the crowd, I think, matters, but I don't know, it
matters. It matters in Philly, it does.
I don't know. I think it does to an extent, but I'm saying, in football, the crowd noise, you have to communicate with your guys because the plays are so complicated.
Compared to football, yeah.
Yes, and even in other sports, like in hockey, I don't think it really matters much outside of the crowd noise. The crowd noise and momentum and all that stuff does matter, but I think many professionals will tell you that they don't hear it and don't listen to it. And I think that it's not as big of a deal to go and play 3 on the road because I don't think that there's now, the one thing in baseball that I do think matters is ground rules because every stadium is different. So if you're going to one of these more cookie cutter stadiums that have been built recently, you don't have a lot of those nooks and crannies. But if you play at Fenway, you've got the pesky pole, you've got the triangle out there, right? There's weird eccentricities of some of these. Houston used to have the hill, stuff like that. But I'm just saying, in general, from the crowd matters. But if it's a veteran team, I don't know how much that bothers them to an extent. But it does.
I would disagree. I think what's been great about watching the Phillies in the past 2 years is you can see how home field does have a huge advantage. You come into that stadium, it may not be intimidating for the other team. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's just not intimidating for the other team. But what it does is the Phillies players, because they're so connected to the city and in that stadium, they get really juiced up. And they get into it, and they you see the hand signals to the relief pitching staff. You see them Castellanos showing the ring. He's not flicking off the team. He's showing that ring finger. That's part of the drama of making that big hit. So no, I think it's a huge boost for the Phillies, not because it's messing up Arizona, but because the Phillies are feeding off of that energy. And they're just, the pitching's been lights out, like you said, and the hitting's there.
I think both can be true. I think it can be what I'm saying is not intimidating, and I think it can also be true that, of course, the players get a juice from being in front of the home fans, especially when the fans are great, whatever. So I'm going to jump ahead and give you my stat of the month, and it's applicable because it's for the National League Championship Series. So the Diamondbacks and Phillies in their last 20 matchups, the Diamondbacks have won 10. The Phillies have won 10.
Oh.
In the last 80 matchups, the Diamondbacks have won 40. The Phillies have won 40. And in the last 150 matchups, 75 and 75.
Oh.
This is going 7.
That's nice. That's a nice pull.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
And if you go to 151, the Diamondbacks
totally
have the lead.
They're just totally split down the middle.
Yes, but if you go to 151, 76, 75 Diamondbacks. So I don't know if that means Diamondbacks in 7. I'm not making any predictions, but it's just a lot of fun. So I think that the LCS round is going to produce a lot of fun. I know that some of these markets they're not going to have a national pull that the way that some of these other markets will, but I think that baseball is not a national sport in that way anymore. I think it's a lot more regionalized to where you are. And if you're already a baseball fan, you've already got us hooked. So we're going to watch this regardless.
You know what? I get that. I get that it's not a national draw. But I was talking with you and on the show, I think, the Diamondbacks are such a fun team. They're a fun team. They were fun this entire season. I mean, they had to slump like for 2 months or so, 1 month, 2 months, but they bounced back. This team is not to be ignored or underestimated at all. They've been good. They've been very good all year, and the Phillies should not overlook them. I don't think they are, but
no,
there should be excitement about this matchup, and I like it. It's good. It's a good match. There's going to be people that will cry and say, "Oh, it should be the Dodgers. It should be Dodgers Braves." I'm sorry, guys. I just don't buy it.
The team that deserves to be there is the team that played better, and the 4 teams that are here have played better throughout the playoffs. Fight me, because that's what's happened. That is what's happened. By the way, Verlander just got pulled 6 2/3 at 101 pitches. So that's like old school workhorse type stuff. I love that ace stuff. I mean, that's Verlander at 40-something. It's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
So I'm excited. But are you nervous about this round?
Very nervous. Yeah, I'm hanging. Game 4 is hanging on the edge of my seat. You have to be nervous. That's what makes it fun. Even though I was so nervous watching these games, honestly, like that's the excitement of the game. I like being nervous watching these games. It makes it more fun. And then when you finally get that like huge hit, you're just bouncing off your chair. I mean, yeah, I'm nervous.
Famous story, and my wife is downstairs, and she can confirm this story. When we first met, it was during the 2013 run for the Red Sox, which was a magical run because of the marathon bombing and everything. But she and I were together. We'd been together, I think, for 5 months, 6 months, something like that. So we've been together, but we hadn't really consumed sports together because we got together in April. And so the baseball season has started, football is over. So now we move into October, and the Red Sox are playing the Tigers in that LCS that year. Yeah. Max Scherzer was actually the pitcher on the Tigers that year.
Oh, my gosh.
And this is the famous David Ortiz Grand Slam game where he hits the Grand Slam. They're down 6-2. The cop, the security guard in the bullpen, Torrey Hunter, flips over. Well, she's sitting on my lap while we're watching. This base is loaded, like Fenway Park is buzzing. And I legit threw her off of me when he made contact because it was one of those where you just kind of know. And then like, as soon as it went over, I was celebrating so hard that I slipped and fell into the counter. And I was just like on the ground with my arms just up in the
cheering.
Air. Yeah. And she's just like, I don't get it. And I'm like, yeah, I can't really explain to you like why that, like obviously it's a Grand Slam, but why that is so exciting. Because that team had been carrying so much of the weight of Boston. And that was a year I think that most people could get by their hatred of Boston and get behind that team because they had a lot of likable guys in that team. Shane Victorino, Johnny Gomes, like those are, and even Pedroia to an extent, I think people could get behind. And then, of course, all the drama. So that's a funny story for anybody who has ever had a marital issue. And we weren't even married. We'd just been dating. But yeah, threw her right off. I don't know where she landed. And she was just like, what was that?
Well, did you at least like follow her around with a pack of ice or like help her out or anything? Like just to make you look a little bit better?
Thankfully, she landed on the couch from afterward. But I think she was more just watching me fall over in celebration because it was one of those moments. But that's what baseball does. Like there's not much drama. Like any other sport doesn't really build that kind of drama. But when the pitcher is staring in at the catcher, the batter's waiting, the crowd is at a fever pitch. Not any other sport can really recreate that the way that baseball does it.
Exactly.
And I think that's where you get that. So the playoffs we'll revisit, I think, after the World Series is over, when we will close out this season of Flashing the Leather and come back sometime in the offseason. But let's get to some victory laps because I'm very excited about this. So the last 2 times that we talked, especially around the trade deadline, we talked the last 2 times about Shohei Ohtani, which is not difficult to do because he's a guy you should be talking about in baseball. But the trade deadline, the Angels made a business decision, and their decision was to keep Ohtani and not shop him. And you and I, me more than you, I think, was very, very vocal about that being a bad business
not
decision.
only just not shopping them, but like saying and making a statement, which is very rare, actively saying he is not on the market, like several days before the deadline, not even accepting an offer.
Really dumb. And you and I both said that going all in this season was too late. And it didn't take more than 10 days for everything to fall apart for the Angels. So we are taking a victory lap because Ohtani gets hurt. The team dumps everybody, including Giolito, that they traded for. Nothing that they did made sense. And it's on fire. It's not recoverable. And even to the point where they were
on fire.
They were almost actively shopping Mike Trout at the end of the season, to where they were like, yeah, we'll listen to offers for him. You should have done that at the beginning. We both said it. A lot of people have said it. And we got a lot of crap for saying that. But now, playing the result, we're going to take a victory lap.
They traded for Giolito, which, remember I was saying that I respect the moves. I don't agree with it. I respected what they were doing because they were trying to win.
Sure.
They were trying to win. Now, I didn't agree with it. I thought it was a bad idea, but I'm like, okay, they're not just saying we're not shopping Ohtani and then doing nothing. They actually went out and got people. What happened to Giolito? They put him on waivers. And then he finished the season as a Cleveland Guardian, actually did pretty well.
There, yeah. But he stunk for the Angels.
He stunk for the Angels, which he's a streaky player, so I won't get into it. But man, oh no, they got zero for Ohtani. They could have actually shopped him around last year and could have gotten something for him. But now the other thing that was weird too, their PR is just a dumpster fire. He tears his UCL or has a partial tear in his UCL. Then he's still batting. He's still actually batting, and then gets the oblique injury, and then just without telling the media, just randomly packs up his locker and goes back to Japan or something without telling anybody. How do you think the media is going to react to them just saying goodbye? Yeah, I'm done for the season. Yeah. It didn't broadcast anything, didn't even really say anything about Ohtani's health, nothing. Just packed it up.
They deserve it.
And I'm like, well, maybe he's trying to put in a bid for the MVP, which he still might get the MVP this year.
If that's the case, I don't know if I see that.
Is that worth
no
batting?
No, it's not. I don't know if that's something that Ohtani would do. It doesn't seem like the Japanese players would be that way. That's a very selfish thing, and like Japanese culture is not quite like that.
He's a true competitor as well. So he's Japanese, but he's also a true competitor.
But when you're hurt, and he has to know. He has people who are telling him, who are in his ear saying, you've got to think about your future, because he has potentially $500 to $600 million on the line. And that's what sucks, is that the Angels messed it all up. They messed it up for everybody, more so for their fans. But the Angels are not allowed to have nice things because of the mismanagement of having not one, but two generational players at their disposal at the same time and coming up with nothing. They deserve nothing. They get no sympathy from me. And you know what? Woo, take that victory lap. We're going home.
And you know what? They did nothing with, even when Ohtani was healthy before the UCL injury, they still weren't great. They were already falling apart before he was injured. He went out, and unfortunately for him, he gets the surgery, the UCL injury. Now he's getting surgery. He will not pitch next year. That's unfortunate. Because that's his second one, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's a second Tommy John surgery. May not pitch again, which is sad, very unfortunate.
Oh, yes.
But now other teams might have a chance to get him on their team. It's not just the Dodgers.
No, I think when we go into the offseason, when you and I do our first offseason episode, I think we need to deep dive into what his value is if this is true, if he's only a batter. Yeah. Now, he's going to carry a ton of weight, of course, as a batter, but I think that there is major philosophical discussions that we could have about what that comes with, because I think it takes away half of his generational talent.
Because he can't play defense now, too.
Yes.
He can't play defense.
Exactly.
So it's like the Bryce Harper, DH Bryce Harper, which is still valuable, but not doing anything else.
No. And I think if there's another victory lap we should take, which I feel like we've taken one already, but let's go again because the Mets are fun. The Mets and the Padres, I would go back into the archives, and I may do this one day, and play how I said, first episode we ever did, that I thought that this historic spending wasn't going to matter, and I thought that it was bad spending. Now, I think the Padres are a little bit different because it's your first year with these guys all together, but it's another situation of high-priced talent not fitting together for one reason or another.
Oh, yeah.
And the Mets at least dumped everything and knew, right? So that's how we get Scherzer and Verlander in the LCS. The Padres, though, they didn't do anything because they're stubborn and they're not as savvy, I don't think, as the Mets. The Mets knew, even though they spend a lot of money, it's like, okay, cut bait, let's do this. And the Padres, though, they showed flashes. At the end, I think they ended the season on like a 5 or 6 game win streak. And it's like, there's the flash, but a season of disappointment. And I'm taking this victory lap personally because I said it. I said it.
You did.
But I don't take pride in this. I mean, I do.
I think you should.
A little bit. Mets. I definitely do with the Mets. But it sucks because the Padres could have been a very exciting team with a lot of good, again, young superstar talent.
I think people were rooting for the Padres. I was one of them. They didn't need to get Xander Bogaerts. They didn't need to.
No.
They had Fernando Tatis Jr., one of the best talents of the game. Did have some problems, but he only lost 3 weeks of the season. They didn't need to get him. And then they put him out in the outfield. I don't think he wanted to play outfield.
This is another philosophical discussion that we will have about how you do the spending correctly. And I do believe that the teams that win consistently do the spending correctly because I know that the fans always want the splash. They want the splash guy.
Okay,
Red Sox fans wanted us to sign Bogaerts. And I said that not signing him is going to be better for them long term because the length of the contract, given his age, you're not going to get the benefit out of it that you think that you're going to get. And if the Red Sox can take that money that they're not going to spend, develop other players, and get a better team as a result, that I think is better business. But now the Padres are facing, holy crap, we just spent a bunch of money and now we were mediocre.
Yeah.
So the Mets, I think, are full rebuild now. Like they kind of know, boom, full rebuild. And I think that's smart. Just cut bait. Don't even try. The Padres, though, are going to be stuck in this position where if they haven't produced in 4 or 5 years, now, man, they got these albatross contracts that they got to deal with.
The Padres might bounce back next year because they had a really weird year. Machado didn't do as well as he should have in previous years, like he has in previous years. Tatis was kind of figuring his way out. Blake Snell had a lights-out year. They had some pitchers. I think Yu Darvish did. He's serviceable. He did okay. Bogaerts was up and down streaky. But I feel like some of their stars still are there. I'm excited to see what they'll do next year, especially with the Dodgers, the way that they are, and the Diamondbacks now emerging as,
it's a tough division.
Potential contenders.
Tough division.
So, yeah, it is.
And the Giants could come back with a new manager and be better than they were this year.
Yeah, the Giants were in there too.
Yeah, so that's a tough division. And, I mean, God, can you imagine if the Giants get Ohtani? That just changes everything. And there's a lot of what ifs, but I think the what if that has come to fruition is that just because you spend a lot of money doesn't mean that you're going to win. It takes the right guys at the right time, and sometimes it just takes some damn luck.
Yeah,
to win in the major league.
Yeah.
So we're getting up to the end, my friend, and we have one more thing to do. I want to hear, how did your fantasy season end? Because I know the last time we spoke, lots of ups and downs this season.
Oh, yeah. Not an ideal season. I have to congratulate Team Friendly for winning the championship. He had Trey Turner on his team, by the way, and he did very well.
Howdy Hooker.
A little bit, yep, the Howdy Hooker baseball.
Got to write this down.
So I finished in 6th place. Not good out of 10 teams, really.
That was as a statistician, I needed that.
Underperformed.
Okay.
Terribly. I had Machado on my team and Tatis, so that's why I was kind of pulling for the Padres. Machado just did so bad. I will say that, I didn't mention Juan Soto on the Padres.
Yes.
Big off-season acquisition potentially next year, by the way.
I think he's going to land somewhere else and make a big splash because I don't think that they need him.
I saw him in a Yankees jersey, like AI-generated Yankees jersey today, and I was like, oh, please, God, no. But
Dodger. What are you talking about?
Maybe.
Dodgers get everybody.
Yeah, so congrats to Team Friendly, and he edged out all aboard the barrel train, who is the league manager. And no, it was a really fun year as per usual. I love playing with those guys. So, yes, didn't do well this year, but still an enjoyable season.
Well, good. I mean, that's all that you really want, right? Is
Yeah.
to have it. I mean, it keeps you engaged throughout the entire season. Not that you wouldn't be, but I think next year your son has to be general manager of the team for you, and then we can track how this goes.
I think that they've kind of outlawed kids' involvement in the team, but he definitely was checking my team every day and even swapping players in and out, making sure that I didn't have anybody on the bench or
I like it.
Swapped out. He said, "Oh, this player's playing against this hot hitting team. Do we want to really play this pitcher?" Things like that happen. So
everybody needs a George Costanza assistant to the traveling secretary, and I think that your son has taken on this role.
Yeah, he loves it.
A lot going on. The LCS is happening, and I think the next time we speak, the World Series champion will have been crowned. So before we go, do you have an unbiased pick as to who you think is going to be in the World Series?
Okay, unbiased pick.
He can't do it. Folks,
Rangers, Phillies. Rangers, Phillies. Yes. I would love to see it.
Okay, there you heard it here first. I mean, honestly, right now, that seems like a pretty reasonable pick because I think they're the two hottest teams, and I think it will be a fascinating series if that takes place. But you will hear it all first here. Before we get you out of here, a little bit of administrative stuff. Of course, we need to plug the social media. Please remember to check us out on TikTok at INC Sports is the handle for that. Facebook, you can search INC Sports for our Facebook page. We're on Instagram at INC Sports is the handle there. Every Friday, Coach and I do College Kickoff Eve, which is a college football show. We like to break down the week that's coming up. Honestly, it's just an excuse for us to hang out live every single Friday because that's where we are in life at age 40. This is what we do. And it's honestly some of the most fun. My son does make a pick every week, so you want to tune in because he is 4-1 in making picks live on the show. Wow. He is better than all of the prognosticators out there.
Good job, James.
Yes, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe is always very helpful. And if you're if you are listening on audio, also remember, follow, subscribe, rate, review, all of that good stuff. Support the Matty Ice Media Network. MattyIceMedia.com is back up for all the other podcasts that we have. Jonesy, it is always an absolute pleasure to have you up here. Your insight is second to none. And I just have a great time talking with you. To everybody else, I hope this finds you well. Hope this finds you safe. And we will talk to you next time. This is Flashing the Leather.
That's baseball, baby.